Hey there, here in the writing shed with Dani Pescuma. Grab a cuppa, settle down, and let's begin. So I want to start today's episode with a question for you. Do you have a book or a film that found you at the exactly right moment? Not what you went looking for, one that just appeared in your life. Through a friend, maybe, a glance at the local library bookshelf, or a raining afternoon with nothing else to do, and somehow, without knowing it, this book changed something in you. Well, I have one. And it's the reason this podcast is starting on a Tuesday. So today I want to tell you about this book, this film, and about my father. And also about a professor called Morrie Schwartz, who taught me, without ever even meeting me, what it means to really show up for your life. So this is episode 1 of In the Writing Shed with Dani Pescuma, and it's called Tuesdays with Dani. So it was just an ordinary day over 20 years ago. I was having lunch at home, watching a film on TV, not really watching it, like just having something on in the background while I ate, because I had to leave for work soon and I didn't have time to actually sit down with anything properly. So I was there having lunch and my father came home for lunch. He saw what was on the screen, he glanced at it and he said, very casually, very matter-of-factly, "Oh, I saw this film at the weekend. It is a really good film. You should watch it." And emphasis on really good. And then he went on, had his lunch, I left for work, and that was it. That was the whole conversation. We didn't talk about it after. But something about the way he said it stayed with me. My father is, and honestly, I say this with so much love. My father is not a man who typically recommends emotional films. He is a wonderful person, but at the time when I was in my early 20s, he was quite strict and reserved in that way that fathers of his generation sometimes are. So when he said really good about the film, about this film in particular, I noticed it. So what happened was that weekend I rented the film in our local video shop and I watched it properly. I watched it alone because I absolutely hate crying in front of people. The film I'm talking about was Tuesdays with Morrie. If you haven't seen the film or read the book, and I have to say that the book is 100 times better, here's a little bit of what it's about. Morrie Schwartz was a university professor, a wise, warm, the kind of teacher who changes lives. He was diagnosed with ALS, also known as Lou Gehrig's disease, and you may have heard of it recently, as it's the same disease that Eric Dane, Grey's Anatomy McDreamy had. So anyway, ALS is a progressive disease that gradually takes away the ability to move, to speak, and eventually to breathe. And as Morrie, faced the end of his life, one of his former students, a sports journalist called Mitch Albom, came back to find him. And every Tuesday, Mitch would visit Morrie. They would sit together and talk about love, about loss, about what really matters when everything falls away, about presence, about time, about the things sometimes we forget to say to the people we love while we still can. So Morrie appeared on the Oprah Winfrey Show and millions of people discovered him. And Mitch Albom wrote the book. And then came the film with the extraordinary Jack Lemmon in the role of Morrie. And I have to admit, I cried watching it. Not just because of Morrie's story, though that alone would be enough. And even know how the film would end, I ended up sobbing in my bedroom that afternoon. I also cried because of a particular scene where Morrie's talking to Mitch's fiancée and she sings for him and he weeps. Not from sadness, but from being so completely, overwhelmingly moved by the beauty and the connection in that scene. Jack Lemmon was extraordinary in that moment, and I completely fell apart. But I think that mostly I cried because of my father. Watching the film, I knew and I kept thinking about him, about this man, my father now, who had come home for lunch on an ordinary day and quietly, almost shyly, recommended a film about love and loss and the importance of being present. And I realized something that I hadn't understood before. It had never occurred to me. My father grew up in a home where things weren't always easy, where the kind of presence and warmth from a father figure that Morrie offered Mitch, that steady, unconditional, I see you, you matter, wasn't something my father often experienced. And watching the film, I felt that something deep in my father was moved. Not just by Morrie's wisdom, but also by the relationship itself, the relationship he had with Mitch, by what it meant to have someone who shows up for you, someone who sits with you, who says you matter, your life matters, what you feel matters. And maybe that's why my father wanted to share it with me, because in his own way of loving, he wanted me to know that too. Well, my father is 80 now. I was in my early 20s when he recommended that film to me. So nearly 30 years have passed. And my father doesn't know, he has never known how much that casual lunchtime moment meant to me and how much I've carried it through my life, my adult life, and how much it shaped the way I think about time, about presence, and about the people I love and how I showed them that. But yeah, I'm gonna tell my father soon. Yeah. Because Morrie had this thing he said, and I'm paraphrasing here because I want to honor it rather than quote it directly, but the essence is this. Most of us sleepwalk through our lives. We are so busy being busy, so caught up in the noise, that we forget to usually be in the moments we are living. Morrie talked about being fully present, about giving our complete attention to the person in front of us, about noticing the small things, the light through a window, the warmth of a cup of tea in your hands, a conversation that feels ordinary but might be anything but. And he said, learn how to die and you learn how to live. And that is amazing. And I don't think that's morbid in a way. I think it's one of the most generous, life-giving ideas I've ever encountered, because what it really means is stop waiting for life to begin. It's already here and it's happening right now. Now, today, on this ordinary Tuesday. And that's why this podcast exists on a Tuesday. And it's not because of scheduling, because the algorithm says Tuesday is a good day to release content or anything. But it's because of a professor called Morrie and a student called Mitch. And because of my father standing in our living room saying really good about a film that broke my heart open. So I want us to be Tuesday people, like Mitch and Morrie, you and me, every week, every Tuesday, showing up for each other, showing up for ourselves in this little shed at the bottom of my garden. Because I really believe that you need a Tuesday, I need a Tuesday, a moment in our week that belongs to us. Not to our to-do list, not to the people who need things from us, not to the noise, just to us, to our imagination, to the stories that are already living inside us, waiting for a quiet moment to just step forward. And that's what this show is, your Tuesday, our Tuesday. Every week on a Tuesday, I will be here in this shed. And yes, it is a real shed in the real back garden where I write, where I teach, and where I record these episodes and probably drink too much coffee. Some Tuesdays we will talk about finding your voice, the one that lives underneath all the doubt and the comparison and the I'm not a real writer. Some Tuesdays we will open letters, real ones, historical ones, imagined ones, and discover what they tell us about being human. Some Tuesdays we will slow down enough to romanticize the ordinary, to notice the magic that's already around us, and to let it become a story. And some Tuesdays, just like today, I will just tell you something true. Something from my life, something that happened in my day, in my shed, in my heart, because I think that that's where the best writing always begins, in the true things. So before I go today, I want to ask you something, and I'd love for you to write the answer down somewhere, even just one sentence in your notebook or on your phone or on the back of an envelope or in the comments of the show. So who is the person in your life who has never known how much they matter to you? And you don't have to do anything with the answer. Just let it land, let it sit somewhere on the page. Because sometimes the most important things we need to write are the ones we've been carrying silently for years. My father is 80, and next Tuesday, as soon as this episode is out, I'm going to tell him. What about you? So, if today's episode made you want to sit down and actually write something, and I really, really hope it did, but you're not quite sure where to begin, I have something waiting for you. And it's called Waltz into Writing. It's a 1-hour creative experience that takes you from blank page to first paragraph. Gently, and without pressure. A little music, a little magic, and a blank page that's less frightening than you think. The link is in the show notes. It's only £7, and it might be the best hour you give yourself this week. Well, that's all from the shed for today. Take whatever stayed with you, a thought, a feeling, a single line, and let it land somewhere. Your notebook's waiting. And until next Tuesday, keep writing, keep imagining, and remember, your characters are already waiting. You just have to open the door for them. I'll see you next Tuesday. Bye.